Talking to us now on transforming traditions, empowering young leaders and enabling best practices in jewelry industry is Professor Arvind Sahay from IGPC, IIM Ahmedabad. Professor Arvind Sahay is the chairperson, NSC Center for Behavioral Science at IIM Ahmedabad, chairperson, India Gold Policy Center, and is also an independent director at HIL Limited, which is a public interest director at IIBX IFSC Limited. In addition to being an outstanding teacher, an academician, researcher, consultant with extensive experience in industry as manager, consultant and corporate trainer, he has held leadership positions in academia as dean, alumni and external relations, chairperson PGPX, chairperson executive education and chairperson marketing area. His specialization includes pricing, marketing strategy, brand management, marketing communication, Salesforce management, neuroscience and consumer behavior. So get ready to listen to none other than Dr. Arvind Sahay and be all set to be evaluated. Let's get ready.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Arvind Sahay. I've been chairperson of India Gold Policy Center for 7 years now. I remember the first conversation that we had, which was almost 8.5 years ago, with a gentleman who's sitting right here, Mr. P.R. Somasundaram, when we first started on this journey of having IGPC at IIM Ahmedabad. And the reason for why IGPC was needed, that reason probably continues. It was needed because there was a need for a research think tank that was able to provide neutral research-based insights and provided a forum for industry, academia and government to come together, a neutral forum. And hopefully we continue to serve that purpose. It was kind of ironical also that I was the chair because I did not really know much about gold starting out, but 7 years down the line, with the help of many friends who are sitting over here, I've learned something about gold. Why this topic today about transforming traditions and empowering young leaders to enable best practices? I believe that the industry today is at a fundamentally different point in time. It is at the cusp of some major changes that are going to happen in the industry, which is a accumulation of a lot of things which have happened over the last 10-15 years. And some of the policy actions which have taken will now lead to those changes accelerating a bit. And so as gold moves to becoming more transparent, more responsible, more sustainable, as David Tate was saying in the morning, and it is going to happen, the next generation of leaders that is coming into the business, how they fare will determine the future of the gold industry in India. Indeed, you could argue, will have a significant influence on the rest of the world. And so we need to be looking at what are some things that these leaders should be focusing on as they move forward, given that worldwide the trend is that governments will push for more transparency, integrity in gold. WGC itself is pushing this blockchain initiative. As more people come onto this blockchain initiative, it will become not a good thing to be outside that, because then you will be excluded. You will not have that trust and credibility. And I personally know some jewelers who are moving heaven and hell to make themselves ready to make that transition. So what are some steps that these young leaders can take? And the assumption that I'm going to make is that these young leaders are probably second generation, maybe third, but definitely not fifth generation. There's one gentleman that I met today in the conference who's fifth generation jewelers. I don't believe what I say will apply to him, but second and third generation definitely would have some applications. So the first thing that I would like to propose is that unlike in the past, when you could get by what I call as largely regulatory arbitrage, if you were a jeweler, you could get by regulatory arbitrage. That will no longer be sufficient going forward into the future. You will need to have a vision for the future for your company, for your jewelry store or chain and for the kind of products and customers and markets that you want to serve. This is going to change. One dimension of the change is of obviously digitalization. We've talked about it before. At IGPC, we had a nationwide survey. The second one is just getting completed. The first one, which was around 2 years ago, told us that during COVID times and immediately afterwards, only about 3% of the gold in India was bought digitally. But more than 40% of the process to buy the gold happened online. So people looked at jewelry, or they looked at what they were going to buy on the digital storefront or on some other places, and then maybe they went to the store to actually buy the jewelry. So as the process of digitalization progresses and customers also move there, what are some opportunities for this next generation that is coming in? There are many different opportunities that we can talk about. In the diamond industry, there is an India-based firm that provides certification for diamonds. It is already now a $70 million firm, 560 crore rupees, and they now have a large investor, BlackRock. I'm sure everyone in this room has heard of BlackRock. BlackRock has invested in this particular firm which provides third-party certification for stones. This company already does more than 50,000 stones, has the capacity to do 1 million stones. The person over there and the next generation over there are thinking about how to make that transition. Now that BlackRock is an investor, it is no longer business as usual. They need to change some of their practices. So they have formed a view of how that particular process will evolve in the diamond certification industry. And they are now working to create that particular future that they think might happen. Of course, some of their efforts will probably make that happen even more strongly. So this is the first thing. Do you have a view of what your firm is going to be? Regulatory arbitrage will slowly fall away. This is what the industry has been looking at for most of the time in the past 30 years. It's not going to be the future. The second part has to be about how I'm engaging with customers. I have a view of the future. What is my way of engaging with the customers? If you look at Gen Z, as they are called, it's a cohort of more than 150 million people in the country. And the question that I would ask these young leaders is, what are they doing to get them to buy gold over the next 20 years? Because what the previous generations did in the last 30 years is not going to happen with this generation as they go over the next 20 years. So how are you selling your gold? Yes, if you're not a Titan, if you're not a Joya Lucas, if you're not a Senko or a TBZ, if you are a 500 crores, 800 crore, 1000 crore company and you want to expand in the future, who are going to be your customers? Will Gen Z buy 22 karat gold, 14 karat gold? And some of those trends you need to be aware of. If you're operating in North Mumbai or South Bengaluru or a certain part of Chennai and you're a 3-store chain or you're a 10-store chain, how do you expand? Who are your customers going to be? And you are the second generation and you are in a place which has done business in a certain way. Make no mistake, that change will come to you also. So how are you going to handle that change? What are the steps that you are taking to get closer to your customers? Third, going back to also linking it to the first point that we had, are you thinking strategically about the future? If you look at the sessions that we've had since the morning, right? The session with Ashok Gautam and Premnath, it was about looking at a minutiae of regulation and how does one deal with that regulation and the interpretation of that regulation for what I can do at IIBX at this point in time. But you know, what is my view of what the industry is going to do in 3 years' time? If I take a cue from the presentation by David Tate, you know, what does responsible sourcing mean for Titan, for TBZ, for Manubhai Jewelers, for Gupta Jewelers? How does it affect my product portfolio choice? I'm currently selling in North Bombay through 2 stores, and there is a certain kind of product portfolio choice that I have for my set of customers. I want to expand to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th stores. Where will those stores be? What kind of products am I going to sell in those stores? How does my inventory management and the cash flow process change? A lot of the business in the jewelry industry is predicated on the underlying inventory management and the cash flow process. That is how the industry has managed for the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's not going to go away, but the relative importance of that will decrease as the demands from the customers change, and the ability to be able to address what the customer wants will create more opportunities and challenges also. So how can jewelers as an industry create that demand? Again, if I take you back to the talk by David Tate, he showed an advertisement in the beginning about gold and women wearing gold in different situations. That's a plug for gold as a category. Amongst us, amongst jewelers who are present over here, how many of us are promoting gold as a category? We live in a country that's always been besotted with gold. But the IGPC price survey tells us that that is not true for the younger generation. For people below the age of 30, households where all people are below the age of 30, the affiliation with gold jewelry is not as strong, nowhere close. How do I get these people to be interested in the category of gold? We cannot just depend on WGC to be promoting gold as a category. What am I doing to promote gold as a category? And here, there are implications for the industry. As gold moves to what was referred to as being a high quality liquid asset, HQLA, can I also help in that process? The 4th and last point for me is, most importantly for young leaders perhaps, is to manage the transitions within the firm. I'm the son, the favorite son or the daughter of the founder, and I'm now beginning to get into the business. I need to be accepted. I need to create my own sense of authority and responsibility within the firm. And how I manage these human behavior problems, challenges, issues that will rise as the old-timers within the firm look at the new CEO of the family coming in and taking over and doing some stuff that they were doing earlier in a certain way. How is that transition going to be managed? If there are more than 1 or 2 people from the family coming in the next generation, do I have a family constitution? Right? Many of the more advanced companies, not just in the jewelry industry, but in many other industries at this size, when they get to 500,000, 1,500 crores, they start having what is known as a family constitution, which defines the rules that everyone is going to live by. Which brings us the question of, do we follow rules at all? How do I get into the habit of following rules? And the interesting thing is that success comes because we follow certain habits, right? Success is almost like a sprint for 100 meters, after which habit kicks in. So if you have the right habits, you get success. Now, what the right habits were for an era where regulatory arbitrage gave me the means of running a successful business may not necessarily be the habits which will get me to be a success in the future. So how do I create those new habits in the next generation and the team that is surrounding that next generation, so that after the sprint is over, those new habits have been formed, and the future will be about those that are able to use these new ideas and able to implement both on a short-term basis and on a long-term basis. I'm not downplaying the importance of being able to follow regulatory changes as they happen, but that cannot be the only basis on which I want to compete in the future. Because if it is, then you will die. Those firms will die sooner or later. So to summarize, these are the 4 points that I would like to submit to these young leaders. Have you formed a view of what your firm is going to be like 5 years from now? What are you doing to work towards it? What is the nature of the market change following on from there that you will want to tackle? Have you moved to thinking strategically rather than just from the perspective of regulatory arbitrage? And how are you going to manage the human resource and the transition issues as you come into the business, as other people from the family come into the business, as the next generation of managers comes into the business and needs to deal with a changing world. And if the Indian gold industry has to be successful, these issues will need to be solved by the young leaders. And the choices that these young leaders make today and tomorrow will determine who lives, who succeeds, and who dies. And the Indian gold industry is at a crossroads. There are some good things which are happening in the direction of movement towards transparency, towards immutability, and good, solid reputation that the industry can make. Before I finish, I also want to share a personal snippet from my side. I have been the chairperson of IGPC for the last 7 years. It's been a privilege. There are many people that I can see over here who have helped with their inputs, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart for making my job easy from the industry side, helping me to learn about that industry. But I will be moving on shortly, so this is, for many people over here, this will probably be the last time that I will be talking to you. So I would just want to thank you in person. I reflected on whether I wanted to come here to say this or say this online, but I thought it was better for me to say this in person. I have been offered and I have accepted the job of a director of a management institution in Gurgaon. So I will be moving from IIMA Ahmedabad in the next couple of months. I wish you all guys good luck. I will watch with great interest to see how the industry evolves. It has been a very significant part of my life for the last 7 years. I have learnt a lot. And I think, as my wife would say, this was God's way of teaching me about gold, because before I came to this particular position, I did not really know too much about gold. It's been a pleasure to have been a part of this group. Thank you very much for your attention. Please do keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arvind Sahay.